Welcome back to the Fly Culture Podcast with me, Pete Tigers. This is an exciting time for a number of reasons. I had my last day fishing the river tour at home. If you're a regular listener, you'll know that I've not had a lot of luck with salmon, and I've described myself as a trout angler who does some salmon fishing, but I really enjoy it. But gave it a go, and on the last day I managed to hook a salmon. I'm absolutely overjoyed about that. My dog, Montana, was equally as overjoyed, and to have that connection with such special fish was an incredibly special moment. So I'm still on a little bit of a high from that and really, really thrilled about it. So yeah, great news. Now, this is also a special episode because it's the 300th episode. I cannot believe we're 300 episodes down the line. And I'd like to say a massive thank you to everyone who's been a guest on the podcast, everyone who's written to me saying how much they enjoy the podcast. And you know, I'll always reply to you. Thank you for that. And to you for listening. I've really, really enjoyed sharing my fishing life with you, sharing people who feel like you do about fly fishing. It has been a wonderful, wonderful time, and it's going to just keep rolling on. So as long as you're enjoying it, I'll keep putting it out there. So for this special episode, I've asked my friend Jason Borger to talk with me. You'll know him from his great skill as a caster. He's written a number of books. He's been in a number of films, including A River Runs Through It. And we talk also about Robert Redford and how we sadly have recently lost him as well, and what he meant to Jason. We cover lots and lots of ground, and it's just, hopefully you'll get that it's just two friends chatting about life and talking about fishing. I really, really hope you enjoy this special episode. Hey, Jason, thank you for joining me on this little milestone episode of the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Number 300. I mean, if you had said number 100, I would have been like, wow, you're at 100 already? 300? That's crazy. So thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be on number 300 with somebody I've known for so long.
Well, it's been great. We were talking off mic. I know that the online magazine I did, Eat, Sleep, Fish, that you're in the first episode of that. Fly Culture is coming up 7 years. You're in the first of that. So it just seemed right to celebrate this little thing with you. So thank you for being a part of that. But more importantly, what have you been up to?
Let's see. I've been pretty busy. Recently, I was just up visiting wife and kids who are in our travel trailer, parked on a beautiful lake. Just south of Mount Hood. Went up with a rod, but unfortunately no fish in the evening, but they're there. So next trip up for sure. And just had a very busy summer. Daughter's into mountain biking and she loves to fly fish. So, out and about as much as we can.
That sounds ideal. And for you, for having the children as well, and you said your daughter was fishing there, is that difficult not to force a fly rod into their hand, or I guess it's inevitable, isn't it?
I suppose they couldn't escape it one way or another, but I didn't want to ever force anything with the kids. It's like, if you want to do this, you can do it, and if you don't, that'll go. But it turns out that both my kids, like my daughter, she's a machine. Like, you put her out there and she's the Terminator. Seriously, she's just like, I'm going to catch you. That is my daughter. And my son he's a little bit more like free-willing, happy-go-lucky. But boy, this last trip I took them both out. There's a little creek nearby that we love to fish. And next thing I know, he's like climbing over some massive fallen logs and stumps. And he's like, they're rising, Dad, they're rising. I'm going to get to them. And he got back in there. I was like, please just, don't break something important because your mother is going to have my hide if you do. But they were after it. And he was really having a good time. I think he just enjoyed the physical nature of it and getting back in there and, making it happen for him. So we got 3 in a row, like 3 and 3 casts. He was super psyched. So I was happy for him.
And that must have made you a little bit proud when you heard him saying that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And with my daughter, like I said, she's been a machine since she was 3. She's just gets out there and goes. And like, her favorite is always to catch the jewel of the pool. Whatever the best fish is in the pool, that's the one. she'll catch the other 50 that are in there, right? Because she's going to just work that pool to death. But yeah, it's fun for me just to see their enthusiasm and not to push it too hard. Just let them have fun and do what they like to do while they're out.
I'm going to steal that one, Jewel from the pool. That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, that's her saying. So I'm like, all right, Jewel the pool, here we go.
Yeah, I like that. And of course, you got another addition to the family, right?
We do. Mr. Bo, he's our new yellow lab. And he's just over 6 months old. So he is, as somebody said, he's a velociraptor, velociraptor right now because he's big. We weren't sure how big he would get, but at 6 months, he was 75 pounds and, American weight. So he's going to be big. The paws have still not stopped growing. So I think he's going to, once he fills those in, he's going to be quite be a rideable Labrador, I think, at that point. But he loves to go out. We wanted a family dog and an adventure dog, and we got really lucky. We got both, and he's a good-looking dog too. So that's yeah, it's nice having him.
Is he a fishing dog?
Oh yeah, he loves to go out. First time he saw a trout, he was kind of like, he kind of had that look, like, and then took a good sniff, and he's like, "Oh, I like this," because he recognized it because he gets salmon kibble as part of his, array of foods that he gets to eat. So I think he was like, ding, this smells like a salmon. So he was very excited to see a trout. We do have to be a little careful out here where we are because there's actually some issues with parasitic stuff in salmon and so on. The dogs can get a little bit of trouble. So you kind of have to watch that. So he's a fishing dog, but he's a fishing dog where you sort of have to pay attention to him a little bit to make sure he doesn't get any trouble. But he loves to be out there.
And will he sort of sit and watch you fish, or does he wander off for a bit and then comes back when something's happening?
He will sit and hang out, especially with the kids. He loves to be with the kids. If all four of us are out and my wife wanders off, he sort of loses his mind because he loves to be near his mother. So he'll have a little freak out for her, but hopefully I think as he gets older, that'll tamp down a little bit and he'll be a little bit more relaxed, but typical lab, so.
And you mentioned the travel trailer, and does that mean for you, because the US lends itself so fantastically well for packing stuff up and traveling, do you use that a lot? And do you travel the country with it?
Yeah, the travel trailer is awesome. Sometimes they can be a real pain because there's just a million things that can always go wrong. And if something will go wrong or it can go wrong, it probably will at some point. But they're totally worth it from the perspective of being able to hitch up. It's big enough for 4 people and a dog just. It can sort of grease us all and wedge us in there. But, you got the big bed, you got 2 bunks that are reasonable size, you got space for the dog, the little kitchen and all that kind of thing. So you can basically be self-supported and just go out and fish or just hang out and hike. Because we like to do everything: backpacking, hiking, mountain biking, and fly fishing, all kind of combined together. So the travel trailer makes all of that possible, and it's easy to tow, and you can get into a lot of places with it. So it makes traveling wherever you want to go, I think, just that much simpler. Especially if you want to go someplace that's back in the weeds a little bit, but you still want to have that kind of shelter. So yeah, it's been awesome from a fishing perspective and everything else.
And have you done real long journeys in it?
We haven't done anything super long at this point, like, to the other side of the country. That could be interesting, although I think it would probably be fine. We've talked about, maybe doing one of these types of things where you start in one spot and you fish and hike and bike and do everything else all the way around a big loop, especially in the West, everywhere from this side we're on the west side of the Cascade mountain range, and then go over to basically the east side of the Rockies, kind of do a big loop down through the south and then come back up and around. That's something that's definitely on the planning list for sure. And I think once we get everything figured, we could do that. It would be enough to do it.
And you've alluded to roughly where you are, but for listeners, what does that mean state-wise, and what does that mean from your home water perspective?
Okay, so I'm basically Portland area, Portland, Oregon. I live just across the river in a city called Vancouver, Washington. So if you're not from the States, you can quickly look it up on a map, and that puts me almost in the Pacific Ocean. That's on 75 minutes to the west. So from a home waters perspective, well, it's interesting. We have the Columbia Gorge. We live at the sort of the mouth of the gorge heading west. And it really is, I think, one of the unsung wonders of, well, probably not just America, but anywhere. It's really a very beautiful place. And it's just filled with blue lines. The Columbia River, which is massive, goes right through the dead center of it. And everything just feeds into that. And you have all these little blue lines all the way up. And then you have a great big blue line called the Deschutes, about 2/3 of the way up off to our east. So the Deschutes, even though it's had some troubles in recent years, still can provide some pretty exciting action, especially dry fly action. And you get anadromous fish in there, plus you get resident fish. But all those little blue trickles too. I'd have to say some of our home waters, you could be found there just because they're close, and you're not going to catch big fish out of those. You're not, just unless there's the salmon are in. Sometimes, yeah, I don't mean Atlantic salmon, Pacific salmon. Sometimes they can get pretty exciting. They'll mill around by the mouth of some of these creeks, and it makes for some pretty good action. But most of them are small trout, very intimate, and you're just out there. The gorge is gorgeous. So I think our home waters would be that direction more than anything. There's plenty of anadromous fishing very close by. In fact, the fish swim about a mile from my house. So you can go down and see them going right on past up the Columbia. But I think for us, the ability to just get out and do something simple and fun and quiet in a really beautiful spot where you're just not surrounded by other people would be the gorge. And then if you want to do something more significant, the Deschutes and rivers up that direction.
And for me, I think Oregon, I've only been once, is just about one of my favorite states. And I've also recently discovered the wine from there as well. And the Willamette Valley.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it?
It is. It's the kind of wine that if you didn't see the label and you drank it, you would have a very difficult time figuring out where that was from. And it's just an hour, 2 hours away from right here is where a lot of the best vineyards are. Really award-winning stuff, and Oregon is pretty special. And on the Washington side too, Washington can sometimes be a little unsung. People think, the Northwest. A lot of times they envision, Seattle and Washington, but there's a whole lot more to Washington than Seattle. I'll tell you that. Especially when you get into the North Cascades, it's very remote, utterly spectacular, like as spectacular as anything I've seen anywhere else on Earth. And full of, little lakes and creeks and streams with trout. And depending on where you're going, you could get anadromous fish too.
That sounds absolutely perfect to me. What I wanted to know was, has your view of the perfect down the river changed as you've grown older?
Oh, I think so. I think it'd be hard not to have that change as you get older. For me, it really is about, now at least, about the experience of being there and sort of the holistic experience of everything that goes on while you're on the river or a creek. I mean, it could be something you could jump across. In fact, you and I have talked about that recently, about northern Italy and the love for trickles, right? These fairy tale style trickles, but they have fish in them. And it's this incredible overall experience. And then, of course, having kids and seeing the kids get involved in it and seeing that connection begin to occur, I think it really changes something deep inside of you as far as how you view yourself in the sense of place and what you're doing. So, yeah, absolutely. For me, it's about everything: the sight, sound, smell, the feel of the water, the sound of the water, and watching my kids have a great time. Or me, once in a while I grab the rod and, Dad wanders off for a little bit and catches a few too. So it's not like that part goes away, the excitement of catching, but it's tempered, I think, from when you're younger to become more of this, like I said, a holistic experience of everything that's happening to you while you're there.
And do you think fishing has swung a little bit that way, away from the hero shots to that bigger picture of it all?
I think there's certainly one magazine in particular, and probably two, that really have had a lot of focus on that in the last several years. And I think that as a whole, fly fishing at least has probably become more experiential. Yeah, and that I don't mean that this has to be a blanket statement, but I think if you look at a lot of photography and videography and so on that's going on within the fly fishing world, a lot of it is more about the experience and the appreciation. You see a fish shot. It's not necessarily somebody holding a fish up. They may be holding a fish, but the fish is in the water, or it might just be a shot of the fish itself under the water, or half out, and then there's all sorts of photography and videography of the experience. It's the land, it's the ecosystem, it's the water, it's the sense of where you are and why you're there. It's not just about got to catch another big one. I've got to catch more. I've got to catch. There's always that excitement, especially if you get into a really good hatch. You're like, I got to keep going. This is it. And that I hope never dies for anybody. That excitement of actually connecting and catching fish, especially when it's good. But I think that fly fishing maybe I hope so, is becoming more contemplative of the whole experience of being there, what it means.
What you just said there made me think of yesterday, and I went fishing for salmon in the morning, nothing, came back for a bit, had to do some stuff, went back out in the evening, and Emma said, "Oh, you're back early." And I just said, "I've got nothing left in the tank to give. I'm absolutely exhausted." And that feeling is still there for me. Whereas I was surprised because I'd think, actually, I might come back, I might not even fish in the evening. I've had a good time. Have you noticed that you can grab those moments rather than fish hard, and you say your daughter's the Terminator, but do you find that you don't need to fish in quite the same way that you perhaps used to?
Yeah, I mean, there was a time, I think, when I was probably in my 20s, even teens and 20s, when I think I was just like, it's just going to go. Yeah, going to get up, ram food down, sprint to the river, hopefully not get a speeding ticket along the way, that kind of thing. Hit the morning rise, hit the mid-morning rise, hit the lunch rise, hit the early afternoon rise. Even if they're not rising, doesn't matter. Yeah, there was definitely a time when it was just go, go, go. And I think that in some ways that was good from a perspective of honing skill and really learning and understanding fly fishing from a more technical perspective. So I was, if you're somebody who's going to be teaching it and especially writing about it from a technical perspective, not so much the why perspective, but I did a lot of technical writing earlier on. That was helpful. But as I've gotten older, the ability to walk away from it has definitely been there. And like you said, sometimes you get a fish and you look at it and you think, what, and you need another one? Am I going to try to get another one? This fish is beautiful. It's perfect. It was the perfect moment. Yeah, I can still fish for an hour, but you know what? That's it. I'm good. That's perfect stopping point. And with the kids, I think that tempers it too. It's like, I don't need to go after it. My kids are here. They're having a great time. And when we're done, we're going to go back. We're going to cook some hot dogs and macaroni on the camp stove. And we're going to talk about Jewel the Pool.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Perfect. And you've talked about mountain biking. You've talked about hiking. One of the things I wondered with your association with fly fishing, do you sometimes need to step out of it from time to time and to reset?
Yeah, I think that's been helpful over the years. Step out, not necessarily meaning like just completely out, gone type of thing, but I think sometimes stepping back can be good if you're saturated by it. And I can only imagine, people who are guiding for a living and guiding a lot of days per year, especially if they're doing the kind of north-south stuff or whatever, where they're switching hemispheres and they're guiding year long. There's got to come a point, where you're like, I just need to get away from this just for a little bit, reset my head, think about things. For me, doing stuff like going to a museum, just being out scouting water, even if I'm doing something else. I'm not necessarily having a rod with me, but I'm out there and I can look at the water and just think about it, and not necessarily having to rig up and having to fish and fish and fish. Yeah, that's really useful. And I think the contemplative aspect of it helps not only with just making it a part of my life as part of who I am, but I also think that sometimes sitting and thinking about it and thinking about situations and so on can help even the technical side of it. because you're taking a step back and you're allowing the computer to crunch, a little bit on a situation and why did that happen or what should have I done? That for me has been actually really pretty helpful. So yeah, breaks here and there are definitely, I think, useful.
And do you think with anglers one of the questions I was going to ask you was, when you step away, what gets you back? But I suspect you're like me and many of the people listening, that there's something niggling away, or there might be a hatch, there might be this happening, you've seen something, you've spoken to a friend. But do you think this deep, deep feeling for fishing is within you, and that's just how it is? And we have people like ourselves that are so deeply ingrained in it, yet there are people who go out and enjoy it, but it doesn't mean quite the same thing or the depth of the thing. They enjoy it, so that's fantastic. But on some levels, it's much, much deeper. It's very, very hard for me to articulate and explain, but I think it will resonate with people. Is that the case with yourself? I'm sure it must be.
Absolutely, it's integral. I've loved fishing, and obviously that includes fly fishing, but I didn't always fish exclusively with fly. I mean, as a kid, I also loved doing some spin fishing now and again. I think the lures were, for me, some of the most interesting things. But yeah, fishing has always been integral. And by that, I don't mean it's like something that we just did a lot. That's one kind of integration where you're like, oh yeah, we do that. We went out twice a month. My dad always took me, or whatever the case it might be. For me, it's like, no, it's integral. It's part of this person really is fishing. And it's not so much, I think, about catching the fish, although there is something that is very deep and intense when it comes to that connection to that fish, especially the way we do it with this. If you even think about tarpon fishing, for instance, where you have huge gear, it's still, comparison to what you would be doing if you were meat hunting, it's very lightweight gear. So there's this very tenuous connection. And with trout and grayling and other smaller fish, that can become almost, vapor light. It's so fine. So there's this incredibly tenuous connection between ourselves and what we're doing. And we have like this interesting combination of predator prey, of admiration, of the ability, unlike, I think, a regular predator-prey relationship, we have that ability to step back and say, this is something that to me is so precious that I'm going to interact with it, but at the same time release it back. So there's that very powerful, very deep thing going on. But then the rest of it is really that sense of the longing out there, being in that water, feeling the tug of the water against your legs, the smell of it. The smell of the mud, the grasses, the trees, the touch of the water on your fingers, just that sense of the oneness that you get. And I'm not trying to necessarily go too deep here, but I really think it's there for some people. It's just like you can't separate yourself from it for too long, and you have to be back in some way, shape, or form doing that.
And for you, your children are coming back to them only because of who you are and the life that you've led, and you've sort of helped take them in that direction so that they can experience it, yet without forcing it. But do you see that deep connection within them already?
Definitely. My son he's 8, so he's pretty young yet, but he very much has that sense of, I think, being out there and just getting that sense of being a belonging, if you will, out there. Because I think it's a very deep part of us that still wants to be out there, and that's key. My daughter, I think she's been that way since she came out. She's a water child, and by that I mean quite literally. This kid, when she was 2, we took her down to the ocean, and she saw the breakers and literally ran fully clothed, straight 90-degree angle right in, kapoosh, and has ever since. That's it. So for her, that's where she belongs. She's a backpacker. She was just up the last backpack trip she took was with my wife. They went up onto Mount Hood, which is a big volcano here, and they went up and camped above tree line. Off she goes. So for her, she'll be 13 in a couple of weeks here. She's just locked into that. And that for her is where she loves to be. Absolutely 100%.
Yeah. One of the magazines at the start, I said, I'm a fly angler. If I had to explain it, you wouldn't understand it. And what you've said there makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing to articulate sometimes because I think it is so deep. It's almost like it probably is hard-coded. And it probably depends on the person, how much that hard coding is expressed, and probably your background, how much opportunity you had for that code to gain expression through experience. So I was extremely fortunate. I mean, ridiculously fortunate to grow up the way I did and to have the experiences I had so that it would really come out. I had experiences that were just, as a kid, I wouldn't trade them for anything. Out there in the wilderness, just doing my own thing. And once that's locked into you, it never, ever goes away.
I wanted to move on a little bit because it's quite timely that we're speaking in a slightly sad way, that we've obviously heard of the passing of Robert Redford. And of course, River runs through it. You were involved with, there's a poster behind Jason. You won't be able to see that, but there's a poster of it right now of him doing the shadow cast. But we were dreadfully sad to hear this news about Robert Redford's passing. And did you have a great deal to do with him? And have you reflected on that a little bit and thought about those times you spent with him?
Absolutely. I suppose it's one of the things that I have been actually thinking about for a while, just because I knew he was getting older, as we all do. And, I knew at some point that particular era would end. And then I, woke up one morning and there was the news that he had passed. And for me, he was somebody who really gave me, more than I think I could probably articulate as I was 21, literally just out of school. And my study in school had actually was film and television, production and theory. So I have a background in that. And it was something I wanted to go and do. And it was incredibly timely that the film was ramping into production at that particular moment. And he really not only made me feel welcome on the set, but he also really made me feel like I had a voice and that what I was doing was important to the story and so on. And I mean, come on. I mean, I was a double, did some stunt work, minor stunt work in the river, that type of thing. It's not like I had some kind of major role, but from the perspective of helping to bring that fishing part of the story to life, he really gave me an incredible opportunity and did it in a way that was incredibly kind and respectful. And I don't think I could ever thank him enough for treating me the way he did and being the person he was. He was Robert Redford. I mean, come on, he could have been anything he wanted to be, and he chose to be somebody who loved the environment. And whether or not, people necessarily agree with what somebody else has to say, you have to respect anybody that's willing to stand for their position and put their money where their mouth is when he very much was somebody who did that. So when I look back at his legacy, I just see somebody important in my life who didn't have to be, but was.
And was he as fascinated by fly fishing as perhaps we felt he might be?
I think fly fishing for him was, I think in many ways, at least as far as A River Runs Through It goes, a vehicle to tell the story in this beautiful, artful way that provided a connection to land and water, which is, I think, also key to his personal philosophy on life and living. So from that perspective, I think it was quite important. From a general perspective, he also appreciated fly fishing just generally in life. If you go and stay at Sundance Resort, I'm not talking about the Sundance Film Festival, which is on the other side of the mountain, where I guess it's moving to Colorado now, but it has been on the other side of the mountain in Utah for a long time. But if you go to the Sundance Resort, one of the best fly shops I've ever been in. It's microscopic, awesome, has the River Runs Through It poster in it, as you would expect, and it's literally steps from a trout stream, and you can take 3 steps, dap a dry fly in, boom, you've got a Utah mountain trout on, just like that, right there. So he very much appreciates fly fishing from an integral perspective of the mountain lifestyle, or just that entire holistic lifestyle of living out there and being out there. So yeah, it's definitely a fond memory for me of how he appreciated it and continued to do so, not just for the film.
And how for you does that feel, walking into a fly shop like that and you see that poster?
Oh, I think it's always fun to see it up there. It represents a lot of things. I read the book when I was a kid. It was published in 1976, and I read it not when I was 6 years old, but I read it when I was still a kid. And you don't necessarily get everything that's going on in a book that's written that way when you're that young. But that story has resonated with me for a long time, and I've read the book multiple times since. So seeing the poster is always fun from that perspective. But it also, it really brings me back to those days. That was a very, very special time. It's not the kind of thing you're going to replicate again, probably ever. It'll be a very long time before anybody else ever does a film of that nature. And it just represents that summer and what that meant in that time in my life. And it's that perfect combination. All the people I worked with, got to know the land and the water, that particular rock to stand on, and how that was, only a couple of miles from where I caught my first ever trout on a fly. I caught my first trout on a fly in the Gallatin drainage, and that, the shot that's on the poster is from the Gallatin River in Montana. So it was a very much a full circle type of event for me.
Lovely. Absolutely beautiful. That film, of course, caused this colossal spike in fly fishing.
Yes.
And I know I was speaking to some people within the industry when we had COVID, and there was a similar sort of spike. Have you witnessed that? And as a result of that COVID spike, has that actually followed through, or was it used for people, and rightly so, to be able to get out and breathe fresh air? Or have you seen that fly fishing has continued to grow as a result of that?
I think anytime you got a spike in anything, that's what it's going to be, is a spike. I mean, that's a good way to describe it. When COVID hit, and all of a sudden we had lockdown where I live for a couple of weeks, which was really interesting because all of a sudden the air was clear and gorgeous. There was no traffic. It was very quiet at night. It was really interesting. But one of the first things I said was, I'm going fishing. If I'm not walking around saying hi to everybody, I'm going fishing. And I think everybody else went fishing too. Everybody else who could, and probably some people who were like, I'm going to try fly fishing now. I'm not going to go fishing. If I can't be doing this other stuff, I'm getting out of here. So, yeah, I think there could have been a spike in there. Whether or not that's carried forward, I don't know. I think spike's probably a good term. There's always going to be a tapering off. And frankly, once that era ended, things start sliding back into, return to office and all those other types of things, it's just naturally going to taper down. So, there was a huge spike following the River Runs Through It, and that tapered off as well, although, a much more elevated level, I think, is where it tapered off to. As far as COVID goes, I think that was definitely a smaller overall type of blip on the fly fishing radar.
I wanted to move on because this isn't the only film that you've been involved with, and I only got to see it relatively recently on something or other, and it's disappeared again. But you were also involved in 2010 in the film River Wye. Was that also fun?
It was. It shot out here, and by out here I mean in Oregon. So it's a another book that's a personal favorite of mine. I know that we may differ on our thoughts about that, which is fine. For me, perhaps it connected because I read it also as a teenager. And then going, wow. So that for me, the coming of age was just like, whew, it was really powerful. But I think that it's a very different experience when a river runs through it. Much smaller film, shot much more quickly, shot here. And while I, certainly had involvement from the fly fishing aspects, the duration was much shorter, and it wasn't quite as in an intense filming experience. Although, when you're shooting in such a short duration, you have to shoot very quickly, and the intensity is strong from that perspective, but it's not much larger, quote, Hollywood level production. So yeah, it was a great time working on it. I got to spend some time around some actors who like to fly fish, and be out here in the water, a little cold as always when it comes to those kinds of scenes, but you're out in the Oregon wilderness and can't complain about that.
And do you find that the actors pick up, if you're helping them with casting, for example, do they pick it up pretty quickly? Or because I think you probably are aware that lots of other people will be watching it and saying, well, that doesn't look right, or that doesn't look right. Are you aware of that aspect of it? And do you watch that closely as well?
Yeah, it's interesting. Actors have to be mimics, and they have to be able to do things quickly. At least good actors who are polishing their craft learn how to do these types of things, or at least mimic it very quickly. An actor maybe has to play something on a guitar, right? Well, they're not going to learn how to play guitar, and take years worth of lessons because they have 6 weeks to prep, right? They're going to learn how to play exactly what they have to learn how to play. That's it. It may sound perfect because they practiced in their trailer after every single time they're sitting there practicing it. So you're like, wow, they can play guitar. No, they can't, but they can play that song beautifully. So it's the same with the fly fishing. Like, you need to be able to do this. Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? Great. From the film perspective, you can only get so nitpicky. Like I said, my background's in film and TV production in theory. So my training was in that. And there comes a point where you got to say, okay, the geeks, and that's you and me and probably anybody listening to this podcast, are going to pick something apart. That reel wasn't available in 1929. That didn't come out till 1932. This movie is, yes, I know. But it turned out to be the right cut for that particular scene. And yes, it's off by 3 years. We will all live, right? The geeks in us won't. We'll all be like, oh, why wasn't it right? Yeah. Hey, it's a movie. And it's not about the exact precision of detail to the nth degree. You got to get it good enough. And I hate that term, good enough. But really, you're trying to tell a narrative story. And that type of thing where, okay, maybe he broke his wrist a little bit too much. The back cast loop isn't all that great. You know what? It'll be all right. We'll be okay. But the actors definitely want to make it look right. They don't want to look wrong while they're doing their thing. So all the actors I've ever worked with have very much tried to get it right enough that they don't have to think about it too hard during the scene, because they also have to do this emotive storytelling. So there's a lot going on. That said, highly athletic actors, Brad Pitt, very athletic, great hand-eye, no problem. Brad, definitely no problem. And, Tom Skerritt was already fly fishing. So, and then on River Y, you had William Hurt and you had his son. And so there was a fly fishing connection there already in place, which was cool.
Nice. It's interesting what you say about the actors being mimics. And I remember watching on a TV show when the film The Doors came out, Oliver Stone's film The Doors, and Carl MacLachlan was playing Ray Manzarek. And they set up an old Vox Continental organ, and he played the introduction to Light My Fire and played it, which isn't the easiest thing to play, but he did a bloody good job at it as well. And like you say, there must have been many hours just for that shot of him playing it to do that. And that skill and remembering, I think, is a key art of an actor as well, isn't it? Remembering lines or whatever that may be from that process, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And even if you can't necessarily play something or whatever it may be, you can do it well enough that somebody can fill in for you. Or you can do it well enough, you can have a stunt double, right? Who can do the long shot. And close up, it looks good when you're doing it. And then your stunt double does the other thing. And it looks like you've done, or you're Tom Cruise, you just do everything anyway. It doesn't matter. Jump out of an airplane? Yeah, guess what? Jump off a building? Yeah, I got it. No worries about it. So he's putting all the stunt doubles out of business.
So we've touched on the feel of fly fishing. Does it need to grow? Are we in need of people having to have people come into it, or is it fine just the way it is?
Boy, there's the nice loaded question. I'm I'm in trouble either way. Thanks a lot, Pete. Well, I think from the perspective of conservation, and you could look at this both ways. You could say from one side, the more people in, the worse it is for conservation because there's more people out there, right? At the same time, you could say, well, from a conservation perspective, the more people in, the better it is because you have more friends of rivers and waters of any kind. I should just say rivers, but I live next to a huge one, so I guess that comes up. But it could be rivers, creeks, oceans, lakes, ponds, estuaries. It doesn't matter. You got friends of those things, and the more the better, particularly if those friends happen to be people in powerful positions, which can be very useful because then they love something too and they understand it. I think that fly fishing, could it always use new people? Well, I mean, everything's cyclical, right? People pass, new people come in. Some people leave a sport because it just doesn't resonate with them anymore. And having someone come in who maybe it does resonate with and who finds a passion, that's awesome. I think one area of growth that might be interesting that doesn't necessarily put extended pressure on resources is people who are already fishers who would take up fly fishing as a secondary thing. If you look at the bass world here in America, it is an industry. It is not just bass fishing. It is a thing. And if people listening to this podcast have never been in like a Bass Pro Shops in America, if you come here, you need to go to one or a Cabela's, and you need to have your mind blown. Right? If you think you've been to a tackle shop, you have not until you have walked into one of those two places. They are beyond belief. So people who are already fishers who might say, oh, maybe today I'm going to pick up the fly rod and throw for bass, which, by the way, is super fun. I do it a lot. There's a bass lake not too far from me, and I like going up and catching bass and bluegills and other things like that. So a crossover growth would be something that would probably satisfy tackle manufacturers and would satisfy people who are concerned about, a descent upon the rivers once again, so to speak, after, a certain movie came out. It seemed like there were at least a few rivers got crowded. I'll tell you what, right after the film, I was fishing in Yellowstone in the national park. And if you walked more than about 200 yards, you were all alone, just you and the buffaloes and the bears. So that was about it. You could still walk into places and fish all day and maybe see one or two other people. So, yeah, I think growth could be good, but in a certain way without it getting overhanded.
Beautifully answered. Beautifully done. I'd like to move on and talk casting a little bit, but first we'd like to talk about rods. And is there more, in your opinion, that could be done with a fly rod, or are the gains that we're seeing now that just sort of incremental, do you think?
I think that when it comes to fly rods, and that is the part of fly fishing gear, well, not for me, that most people find most interesting. I'm a reel guy. I like reels. But fly rods from the perspective of performance, and we should take a little step back there for a second. All right. We're holding the thing. The performance is, originally starts with us. And then the fly rod does this kind of, I guess you could call it, translation between our hand and arm and the fly line. So it's kind of our translator out there. And if you want probably shouldn't say us get in trouble, but the magic, I wrote it in a book. So the magic is in the line, in my opinion. That's what makes fly fishing different. Okay, now that I've said all that, okay, line tapers and line construction and so on, for me, is where it's most interesting from the casting perspective, more than anything else. But a really good fly rod feels great in the hand. And when everything's working together, you don't want anything else. You have your favorites, right? You just do. And a really good rod it just feels right in the hand. So do I think there's incremental improvements? Yeah, sure. There's material improvements and so on that could still be made, I think, as we go forward with material science in general, and always tweaking with tapers and so on. That said, again, there's the human element of it. And there's not really going to be, I don't think, some kind of magical thing that's going to happen with fly rods where all of a sudden everybody casts 100 feet. It's got to come from you originally. Could a fly rod be lighter or tapered a little bit differently? Or I think for a lot of people, and this is one of the things I think is important, stronger from the perspective of being able to survive. You're not breaking tips or crushing, the blank, leaning against it in a boat or whatever, fishability. That's survival ability. So yeah, there's certainly improvements that could happen. But I'll tell you what, if you pick up a really well-designed fly rod, I don't necessarily mean from the greatest, carbon cloth you can buy and the most secret resins you can put into it, and the curviest laser cut flags you can wrap around the mandrel. And I've done plenty of that. If you pick up a rod that's just well made and suits you well, you're good. Go fishing, right? Go fishing. Enjoy it. At the same time, if you're a geek about rods, enjoy that too. All right? If that's you, go for it. And that's one of the cool things about fly fishing. $99 rod will catch fish. A $5,000 bill oyster will also catch fish, but boy, is it gorgeous. And if that's your thing, good for you. So I guess my take is you do you, but don't expect magic. How's that?
Perfect. And I think it's going to be rude of me not to ask you about reels then. And I know my friend Warren and I talk about, I've seen this one, I've seen that one. Do you have a Hall of Famer, or are you a hoarder or a collector, enthusiast? Where do you place yourself with that?
I place myself in a guy who likes to use everything he's got. I'm not somebody who buys something or collects something to put it up. I'd be a terrible person when it comes to Ferraris or something of that nature, because I'll be like, I paid $10 million for that car. I'm going to drive it. I don't care if it's a 1964, whatever. I'd be terrible. Like, I can't believe you're driving that car. Well, I paid for it. Yeah. So for reels, oh man, I have had the opportunity to really put my hands on some fine stuff over the years. Really good technical reels. Just stuff you're like, this reel, you would never have to buy another reel. You could use this reel for the rest of your life and you would never wear it out. But if I had to pick one reel that for me personally, I guess, just really does it, it's the RAT hard stuff. And the new Ari, and I think anybody who knew Ari probably loved the reels as much because of Ari as they did because the reels were cool, right? They still are cool. Ari has since passed, but his legacy of that design, and not just his reels, Ari made all sorts of other cool stuff. He had vices and tippet dispensers and just all this really cool stuff. And it's super limited editions of this and that. So I think for me, there was just something about the way he approached that design. Like, it was almost fearless. He was like, I'm just going to do this. And if you don't like it, it's not for you. It's for people that understand what I like. And I happen to be one of those people that really liked it. So, and that's not saying that there aren't other amazing reels out there. There are. I mean, I've seen stuff that's just spectacular. And especially technical perspective, some really great stuff. The other one I think that has really taken off in the last few years, especially, is a lot of the stuff that Abel was doing with the Artist Series. just because it's really cool. And you're fishing this reel, just beautiful, and you can customize it and all that kind of thing. And if going down the ladder a little bit in terms of price point, because when you're talking Ari Hart and I are talking about, now it's a collector's piece. Even though I use them, it's now a collector's piece. Able, I mean, the artist series are not cheap, but I also really like some of the stuff that Lamson's doing. They got some really cool looking stuff, works well, lightweight, that type of thing. I guess we could go on and on, but how's that? We'll stop there before I just go on for the next hour.
I think people will enjoy that as well, and they're wonderful choices. And I was thinking about when you said Ari Hart, and that was almost one of the first sort of, it felt to me at the time, niche producers that became more into the mainstream. And because, I don't know if it was because of that such beauty, and I nearly bought, it's not the ATH, which is the one with the offset handle.
There were several he did. The first was a Remco, though, the ATH, the Remco, which is, they're a little precious these days if you want one, but they are, in my opinion, that's, to me, the classic Ari Hart reel, probably because it was one of the first Ari Hart reels I ever saw, was the check mark offset Remco was just like, wow. Yeah, no, they're beautiful. I was that close, and somebody who was selling them was charging. I said, would you put some backing on? And they wanted to charge me a ridiculous amount for the backing, and I didn't buy the reel I was so upset that they wanted, it was a ridiculous amount, and I was buying a rod at the time. It was one of those wonderful moments where I had some money, and I thought I'm going to treat myself to a rod and a reel. And they wanted to charge me a lot of money for the backing, and I didn't out of principle. And I still kick myself about not buying that. Just all because of some backing.
Yeah.
Were they selling it to you by the foot? Or the meter or the centimeter?
At the time, they wanted to charge me £50 for the backing.
Whoa!
Yeah, exactly. And this is 30 odd years ago. Yeah. It was a long time ago, and out of principle, I couldn't do it. I'm a silly boy like that, but out of principle, I didn't do it, which was a silly move. But there we go. We live and learn. Don't we?
I don't know, £50 for backing. You might have been all right on the principle there, I think.
Yeah.
But of course, now it's going to cost you a whole lot more than that to get yourself another ATH. So
you got it. Well, Nature of Fly Casting, your book, for me, is still, and I'm not saying it because you're here, the best fly casting book there is. And I was doing some tuition with somebody the other day, and the modular approach, and I still think about it all this time later, that I was teaching the guy a reach cast. And I said, look, make your cast as normal, you're adding this on to the end of it. And it's just, it makes so much sense still. Is there anything that you're planning or thinking about with that? Or are you looking at other things right now? Because, it must be a very difficult thing to surpass in the sense of its simplicity, yet the way that the blocks add together to allow you to make fly casts with a common sense approach.
Yeah, actually, the second book, Single-Handed Fly Casting, which was really built from Nature. Nature was that's sort of the geek fest, and then Single-Handed kind of toned that down just a little bit, but still kept the modular approach. I am working on something. I think something that has broader appeal, just from the perspective of, for casting geeks and instructors, the modular idea, that's really who it was written for, and for type A personalities, of which there's plenty in fly fishing. And they probably go fly fishing to help tone that down a little bit, but nonetheless, the modular approach appeals to that type of personality where you're like, oh yeah, I can plug this together. And you begin to see casting skills, mending skills, all of that as just separate chunks, and then you assemble them, right? It's not, you have to learn a separate entire skill set to do one thing. No, you already have the skills for it. Just tack this one thing on the end and you've got this other whole skill. Yeah, cool. But I think for a lot of people that gets to be a bit much, especially if you're, maybe a slightly more casual fly fisher who just wants to learn how to do A or B and go out and try it on the river, or try to get an extra 10 feet for your flats fishing, or whatever the case may be. So I am working on a project. I am literally right now, like every day, of taking single-handed fly casting, which was the subsequent book to Nature, and reworking that so that it's, I think, more broadly readable and available from the perspective of being able to just open it up and go. I'm not really getting rid of the modular approach, but I'm doing it in a different way. So there won't be modules, but there'll be the discussion of skill reuse and adding skills together without actually doing the modules themselves. And I think that will help open it up to a wider audience. So if you already have, nature, and especially if you've got single-handed fly casting, it's not one of those types of things where you're like, oh boy, this is going to be super different and new. No, it's a reworking. But that is definitely in the pipeline literally right now, every single day that I'm getting through it.
I look forward to that. And for listeners, please search these out because they are game changers. And yes, you can go onto YouTube and look at these things, but this makes perfect sense. And I remember when Nature first came out that I would sit in the garden, make the cast, I'd have the book open and add those pieces to it. And it's a really common sense approach to fly casting. So if you want something to read over the winter and you're not fishing, get one because you're not going to regret it either. So tell me, are you doing much teaching, demoing?
I do private instruction these days. It was interesting. COVID kind of shut all that down pretty hard there for a while. And I think for me, there was a bit of a sea change in there. My kids really started to get into fishing and so on. And I began to rethink how I was doing certain things and how much time I was going to be spending away and so on. So I tempered the degree that I used to go and do things as far as sort of larger scale public events and that type of thing, and focused more on intimate instruction and on smaller group types of things. I mean, in private instruction doesn't necessarily mean one-on-one. You get 6 people together and do something, have a day on the water or on the lawn or whatever the case may be. So from an instructive perspective, I think it also gave me time to be a little bit more contemplative about the thought process toward instruction and how I approached certain aspects of teaching fly casting, whether it's at the base level or at a more advanced level. And I think a little bit of that will come through in this next project I'm working on, but not big changes. Not big changes. What works really well still works really well. It doesn't matter if it's to an audience or to a small group of people or to one person. You're always going to tune your instruction a little bit, but you're going to stick with things that have been proven to work and that can get results for people. Because that's really the ultimate, is when you see somebody improve and be happy with what they've done, and that they're going to go and they're going to catch another fish because they can do something better now. And that's, I think, for me, the ultimate, whether it's a big group or a small group.
One of the things we try and talk about on here as well is practicing fly casting. And this is for listeners. Does Jason Borger go out and practice his casting?
Yes, he does. Have to. You have to. And that includes foundation stuff. People say, oh, well, once you've gotten good at it, you don't have to worry about the foundations. Oh, yeah, you do. Sure. I think anybody in any physical sport, and I use the term sport lightly with fly fishing. It's more of, there is a sporting aspect from the casting perspective, right? Because you could do casting competitions, so you could say, oh, there's a sporting side to it. From an actual physical human sporting side of it versus a concept of field sports. But yes, I practice absolutely foundations to whatever I'm doing. If I know I'm going to be doing a lot of a certain something while I'm out and about, I'll practice that certain type of something. So it might be distance casting. You say, you have to practice your distance casting? Of course you do. It's like any discipline. In any sport, you've got to get out there and you've got to work out. That's why they have practice, right, at the professional level. It doesn't matter whether it's American football or football in the rest of the world. It doesn't matter if it's, tennis or golf or anything else. If you don't practice, you will not stay at the top of your game. Whether you're a teaching professional or just somebody who likes to fish now and again. Do you have to practice like a maniac if you get out 3 times a year? No. But if you know where you're going to be going and what you're going to be doing, maybe you should spend a little time in the garden, right? To use a term for your side of the pond here, lawn here, and get in some practice that's very specific to what you'll be doing, not just getting out and ripping weeds out. Yeah. So that can be really beneficial. And people say, well, do you really have to cast better? Hey, I'll tell you what, the better you can cast, the more fun you have, because it's less time worrying about the casting, less time worrying about the mending, less time dealing with the ramifications of not being a good caster. And I don't mean I'm an amazing caster, but one that can handle the situation in which you're going to find yourself. All right. You don't have to practice everything. Just hone the stuff that's really key.
I think you've given me one of the best casting tips I've had in 300 episodes, in the sense that what you've said is practice what you're going to be doing a lot of. So if you're casting fishing a small stream and you're casting under a lot of branches, get your side cast going, those sorts of things. I think that's, I was going to ask you for some casting drills, but that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Practice what you're going to be doing a lot of.
Absolutely. And that may change throughout the year. For people that fish a lot, you know how a season goes. You may start out doing a lot of one thing, and that may then shift during the mid-season. You may end up getting on a plane and flying south, at least from where you and I are, right? Other people may be flying north, depending on where they are, if they're listening from, down under. Or they may just be going to a different part of their country and throwing long out of a boat, right? And all of a sudden, all those little small stream skills you might have had earlier in the season, you got to kind of set those aside and practice the long skills, because that's where you're going to be. Practice shooting line. Practice not stepping on the line. That's a useful one on flats fishing. Really useful. And then maybe toward the end of the season, you're getting out the two-hander and you're down throwing for salmon. So that's a whole different. So stop and practice that. If you're somebody who's teaching a lot, and you have a client base that's varied, guess what you get to do? You get to practice everything. But you can still look ahead and say, okay, I know that I've got a client who wants, and we're talking to instructors now, I've got a client who is going to want to go to, the Keys and throw for tarpon. Okay, that means I got to make sure that my skill set and my instructive skill set, not just my, here's what it looks like, here's what you need to do, but how do I get this client to achieve that skill set? I got to go and run that through my computer and figure out what that needs to be ahead of time. So I think we're always doing that. And I think from a perspective of time management and so on, it probably makes the most sense. You got to focus on what you got to focus on. I know it's kind of sounds trite, but it is it.
That makes perfect sense. I think that's a fabulous tip. And, I know we've got a little group of newcomers largely coming on one of our fly culture trips to Mexico in January, and we're going to all get together. So we're going to talk about hauling. We're going to talk about accuracy. We're going to talk about how you're going to hold your fly when you're walking down the flats, those sorts of things, so that people are prepared and they're ready, so that it's not a complete mind thing when they see a fish tailing or a fish comes by. You've got at least a sense of what's going. I'm sure buck fever will probably come into it
always
somewhere along the way. Guilty of it myself, but at least they have a sense and can reset back into it. But thank you for that. That is I think that's a fantastic tip, to practice what you do a lot of. But
yeah. If you've got those people going to Mexico, it's like, yeah, you're like, here's how you hold the fly. Here's how you get rid of the fly quickly, right into your back cast, first cast. If you can get that much, you've already eliminated that whole just that thing that goes on in your head where you're like, okay, step one, step two, what was I supposed to do? You can focus on the fish and freak out over the fact that there's a tailing permit out there and not have to worry about the cast itself. Drop the fly into the back cast, go. If you can get that much, you're already halfway there.
Yeah,
all right,
absolutely.
Now, continue. Sorry.
2026 is looming. What have you got planned? Is it a busy year in prospect for you? It sounds like it from a writing perspective, but have you got stuff starting to appear on the horizon for you?
Yeah, I mean, 26, I think there's a lot of interesting things that are going to happen. There is an opera that is going to be produced on the life of the McLean family. So River runs through it. Not necessarily River runs through it as an opera, but the family history is something that's going to be put into operatic form. And I'm actually, not long after you and I talked today, talking with them about how to do certain things on stage, which I think is going to be really cool. Trying to figure out, I had some ideas, and I'm sure they do too, about how to pull off a fishing scene on stage while you're, I don't know, singing away. I've never done a fly fishing. I don't think anybody ever has. So this is going to be pretty cool. So I'll find out what's going on with that, and that'll be in 26. And then I got a big family trip going to Montana in 26. Get the trailer and get out there and let the kids really, really go for it hard. Now that my son's old enough to just basically do anything, and my daughter, of course, she's married to go for a while, but really give them the Montana experience fully, all together as a family. Be great. Plus, there's just a lot of other stuff on the horizon as far as where we want to go fishing and what we want to do, and so on as a family. This book project. I owe you an article for culture. There's a lot of things happening, and just life in general. Just being out there, whether it's fishing or not, doesn't really matter. It's being there. That's the key.
Nice. This is the tricky question. We have the Fly Culture road trip playlist. Have you got a song that you could choose for me that may set the tone for one of those trips with the family? If you're on your own, if it's just you and the dog, what's the song?
Oh, man. Oh, boy, you really got me with that one. Okay, so I listen to a lot of stuff, I'll listen to anything from 14th century Vespers through metal, through new wave, which we've talked about plenty, through electronica and everything else. There is a song, and it's by an artist called Anime, Aname, and it's called Road Trippin'. And it's electronica, but it's very beautiful, melodic. It's one I listen to a lot sometimes when I'm going up someplace. When we're together as a family, my kids will pick it. I know it's not necessarily what you might think from a fly fisher, but like I said, I listen to everything, and it's a little different. But I think you may find. I'll send it to you send you a link after the podcast, and you can take a look at it, listen to it. That one's been a favorite with everybody from my son all the way through. So maybe that's a little different one for you than you might necessarily get, as a typical response. So
fantastic. Well, thank you very much for that.
Well, one other one you got to have.
Go on.
You got to have this one. You got to have, Take Me Home, Country Roads by John Denver. You have to have that.
Yeah.
At some point, you got to have that on there. So it's an eclectic mix. How's that?
Absolutely. I was brought up, my dad loved John Denver, and I actually wrote an article for another magazine, and it revolves around me playing Rocky Mountain High, driving to the river.
Nice.
And my very substandard singing along with it. But it's about the journey from home to the river via this song and where it's taken me. And absolutely love John Denver. So all over that one. I think Rocky Mountain High is on the playlist somewhere or other. It's on.
Oh, okay. Well, as long as you got one John Denver on there.
Yeah,
Rocky Mountain High, Country Roads. I guess You'd Rather Be in Colorado is another great one. He's got a lot of them that really speak to that sense of being there, out there, and wanting that connection.
Yeah, that summed it up perfectly. Yeah, absolutely summed it up perfectly. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being part of this along my publishing journey, be it online, be it magazine, be it podcast. Thank you for that. Thank you for what you've done for fly fishing. And I know you have a lot of people who will want to listen to this and hear from you. We have listeners in the US and around the world, but also in the UK as well. And I know you have a fan base of people from here as well who will be looking forward to listening to this. So thank you for that and everything that you've done in fly fishing so far. It's been absolutely fantastic.
Well, it's very kind of you. Thank you for saying that. And thank you for Fly Culture. I think I know it's one of those semi labors of love, because you're not going to buy a castle with a salmon river on the proceeds of selling an issue of fly culture. But I think the magazine, no ads, just about being out there and the experience, and that every issue I get, my daughter too, we read it start to finish. So fly culture is special. So thanks for that as well. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Well, Jason, thank you so much for being a guest on the Fly Culture podcast.
My pleasure.
Let's speak soon.
Absolutely.
Well, everyone, this has been another episode of the Fly Culture podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this special 300th edition. Wow, 300 editions. But we've got there. As ever, there's going to be plenty more coming very, very soon. Thank you so much for listening.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly published magazine owned and run by fly anglers. When it comes to fly fishing, we've got you covered.